Jake Miller stared at the three alien women in front of him, his mouth hanging open. Their skin glowed with a soft blue light, and their silver hair floated as if they were underwater. Just 10 minutes ago, he had been walking home from college, and now he stood in a massive spaceship that looked like something from his favorite sci-fi movies. "You are the one we have waited for," said Lyra, the tallest of the three aliens. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Our prophecy speaks of a human male who would come when the twin moons align. You found our crystal in the forest. That was the first sign." Jake looked down at the glowing crystal in his hand. He had picked it up thinking it was just a pretty rock. "But I'm just a normal college student," he said, running his other hand through his messy brown hair. "I'm not special." Arya, the second alien leader, stepped forward. Her eyes sparkled like diamonds. "That's where you're wrong, Jake Miller. Watch this." She waved her hand, and a hologram appeared in the middle of the room. It showed strange symbols that Jake had never seen before, but somehow he could read them. "Wait, I can understand this." Jake's eyes widened. "It says something about a great power and a coming darkness." The three alien leaders exchanged excited looks. "He can read the ancient text," said Nova, the third leader, another sign of the prophecy. Suddenly, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed everywhere. "We must begin his training immediately," Lyra said urgently. "The darkness approaches faster than we thought." Jake followed them through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were made of a material that looked like flowing water, but was solid to the touch. Other aliens they passed stopped and bowed to him, making Jake feel even more uncomfortable. They entered a massive room filled with strange machines. "This is the training chamber," Arya explained. "Here, you will learn to use your special abilities." "What special abilities?" Jake asked. As if answering his question, the crystal in his hand pulsed with energy. Without thinking, Jake raised his hand, and one of the machines floated into the air. Holy cow! Jake nearly dropped the crystal in surprise. The machine gently landed back down. Nova smiled. "The crystal responds to your thoughts. It's been waiting for you, just as we have. But you must learn to control it. The fate of our people, and soon your Earth, depends on it." For the next few hours, Jake trained with Lyra. She taught him how to lift objects, create energy shields, and even communicate with the ship's computer using just his mind. Each time, he succeeded at something new. The crystal glowed brighter. "You're learning faster than any of us expected," Lyra said proudly. "But there is something you must know." She pressed a button on the wall, and a huge screen appeared. It showed a massive dark cloud moving through space, consuming everything in its path. "This is what we're fighting against," she explained. "The void. It has already destroyed 3 solar systems. Your Earth will be next unless we can stop it." Jake felt his heart racing. How can I help stop something that big? Before Lyra could answer, the ship shook violently. Through the windows, Jake saw another spacecraft appear. It was black and covered in red lights that looked like evil eyes. "The Drachnid," Arya shouted. "They're early. They weren't supposed to find us yet." "Who are the Drachnid?" Jake asked, struggling to keep his balance as the ship shook again. Nova's face darkened. "They believe in a different prophecy, one that says you will bring destruction instead of salvation. They've come to capture you." The crystal in Jake's hand pulsed with energy again, stronger this time. Without knowing how he knew what to do, Jake raised both hands. A massive energy shield appeared around their ship, deflecting the Drachnid's weapons. Everyone in the room stared at him in amazement. "Incredible," Lyra whispered. "He's already accessing advanced powers. The prophecy was right. He is the one." The ship's computer announced, "Warning. Drachnid boarding pods detected. Enemy forces will breach the hull in 2 minutes." Jake looked at the 3 alien leaders, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "Tell me what I need to do next. I'm ready." Nova nodded grimly. "The real test begins now," Jake Miller, are you prepared to fight for not just your world, but ours too? The crystal glowed brighter than ever in response, and Jake felt power flowing through his entire body. His normal life might be over, but an extraordinary adventure was just beginning. The Drachnid boarding pods crashed through the ship's outer walls like angry metal wasps. Jake stood with his new alien allies, the crystal pulsing with energy in his hand. But something felt wrong. "Wait," Jake said, looking at the crystal. "It's trying to tell me something." The crystal's glow changed from blue to purple, and strange images flashed through Jake's mind. "These Drachnid, they're not here to fight." Lyra grabbed his arm. "What do you mean? They're our enemies." Jake shook his head. "No, look." He pointed at the nearest boarding pod as it opened. Inside was a young Drachnid female with scales that shifted colors like oil on water. She held up her hands to show she carried no weapons. "I am Zura," she said, her voice sounding like wind chimes. "And we've been trying to warn you. The prophecy you're following, it's incomplete." Nova stepped forward, her silver hair crackling with energy. "Lies. The prophecy has been clear for 1,000 years." But Jake's crystal reacted to Zora's words, creating a hologram in the air between them. It showed 2 ancient tablets, one that the aliens had been teaching Jake about, and another that seemed to complete it like a puzzle piece. "Your people and mine," Zora explained. "We were once one civilization. The prophecy was split when our ancestors disagreed about how to use their power. Each side kept half the truth, thinking the other half was wrong." More Drachnid emerged from their pods, each carrying crystals that glowed with different colors. When they brought their crystals close to Jake's, they all pulsed in harmony. "This is the first real trial," Zora said, looking at Jake. "Not to fight, but to unite. The void you saw, it feeds on conflict between our peoples. Every time we fight, it grows stronger." Suddenly, the ship's computer spoke. "Warning. Void anomaly detected. Current distance, 3 light years and approaching." Through the ship's windows, they could see it, a massive dark cloud that seemed to eat the stars themselves. But now Jake noticed something new. Within the darkness, he saw patterns that looked like the combined symbols from both prophecies. "I think I understand," Jake said. He stepped between the 2 groups, holding his crystal high. The prophecy isn't about choosing sides or proving who's right. It's about bringing everyone together to face the real threat. To everyone's amazement, Jake's crystal began to transform. It grew and changed until it became a floating control panel with spaces for all the different crystals, both the ones from Lyra's people and from the Drachnid. "Your ancestors," Jake realized, "they built this together. And the only way to activate it is if both sides work as one." Zara was the first to step forward, placing her crystal in one of the slots. It fit perfectly. One by one, others from both sides did the same, though some still looked unsure. As the last crystal clicked into place, the entire room filled with light. A massive hologram appeared, showing a hidden space station that had been cloaked between dimensions for centuries. "The Unity Forge," Lyra whispered in awe. "We thought it was just a legend." The computer spoke again. "Ancient defense network detected. Activation requires genetic signatures from both luminary and Drachnid species, plus Earth-human catalyst. Warning, void entity has changed course, now approaching at accelerated speed." Jake looked at both groups. "I know you've been enemies for generations, but right now, we have a choice. We can either keep fighting each other and let the void destroy everything, or we can trust each other and fight back together." Zara stepped up beside him, her scales now glowing with the same blue light as Lyra's skin. "I will fight with you." Lyra paused for a long moment, then joined them. "As will I. Perhaps it's time we learned from our ancestors' wisdom rather than their mistakes." But before they could celebrate this new alliance, the ship shook violently. Through the windows, they could see the void approaching faster than ever, tendrils of darkness reaching out like hungry fingers. "The Unity Forge," Jake said urgently. "How do we get there?" Nova checked the ancient readings. "The station's coordinates are locked. We need 3 pilots, one from each of our kinds, to navigate the quantum space between dimensions. And we need to do it fast," Zara added, pointing at the void. "Look." The darkness had taken on a new form. Within it, they could see what looked like faces, ancient, angry faces that had been trapped there for centuries. "Our ancestors," Lyra gasped. "The ones who started the original conflict. The void, it's been using their trapped anger to fuel itself all this time." Jake gripped the control panel, his mind racing. They had overcome the first trial by choosing peace over war, but an even greater challenge lay ahead. They would have to navigate through quantum space, face the angry spirits of the past, and somehow activate a legendary space station that no one had seen for centuries. "Well," Jake said, trying to sound braver than he felt, "at least things can't get any more complicated." At that moment, every crystal in the room flashed red, and a new prophecy symbol appeared that none of them had ever seen before. Zara's scales turned pale. "You just had to say it, didn't you?" 3 ships flew in perfect formation through quantum space, a space that shouldn't exist. Jake sat in the central ship with Lyra and Zara, his hands hovering over the crystal control panel that pulsed with rainbow colors. The view outside the windows made his head hurt. Twisted ribbons of reality that looked like someone had tied the universe into knots. "Left," Zara suddenly shouted. Her scales flashed warning colors as a massive quantum wave approached. Jake yanked the controls, and their 3-ship formation rolled sideways just in time. The wave passed harmlessly beneath them, rippling with images of possible futures that never happened. "The Unity Forge station should be just ahead," Lyra said, checking the ancient star charts. "But something's wrong. These quantum storms aren't natural." As if answering her words, a massive shape emerged from the quantum fog ahead. Jake's jaw dropped. It looked like a city floating in space, but broken into pieces that constantly rearranged themselves like a giant puzzle. "That's the Unity Forge?" Jake asked. "It's moving." "Impossible." Nova's voice came through the comm from her ship. "The station should be dormant." Zara's scales shifted to a deep purple of concern. "Someone woke it up. Look." She pointed at streams of energy flowing between the moving pieces. They formed patterns similar to the crystal's writing. Suddenly, all their ships froze in place. A beam of light shot out from the station, scanning each vessel. Then a voice spoke, not through their comms, but directly in their minds. "GD NTACSIGNHURESDTKTE. Initiating Unity Pro Tokyo Vol Alpha." The station's pieces stopped moving. A door big enough for their ships opened in what seemed to be the main section. As they flew inside, Jake felt the crystal panel grow warm under his hands. "Warning," the station's voice continued. "Kuoru PTION, DETCTED in MAN systems, emergency override engaged." They landed in a massive hangar where gravity seemed optional. Objects floated randomly, and parts of the floor would occasionally turn transparent, showing the quantum space below. "The station's eye," Lyra explained as they exited their ships. "It's been running emergency protocols for centuries. Something must have damaged it during the original conflict." They walked through corridors where reality itself seemed uncertain. Sometimes Jake would see multiple versions of his companions walking beside him, each slightly different. In one version, Zara appeared with feathers instead of scales. In another, Lyra's glow was red instead of blue. "Quantum bleed," Zara explained, noticing his confusion. "The station exists in multiple realities at once. That's why it was the perfect hiding place for whatever our ancestors built here." They reached a central chamber that took Jake's breath away. It was a perfect sphere, with platforms floating at different levels. In the center, A massive crystal structure pulsed with every color imaginable. But parts of it were covered in what looked like black ice, the same darkness they'd seen in the void. "Look at these readings," Nova said, studying the control panel. "The station's been fighting the void's corruption all this time. That's why it keeps reconfiguring itself." "But why didn't our ancestors use it to stop the void in the first place?" Jake wondered aloud. Before anyone could answer, the station shook violently. Through the chamber's transparent walls, they saw tentacles of darkness pushing through quantum space. "The void followed us," Lyra shouted. The station's AI spoke again. "ATTNTYON. VOID INTITY APPROHing. Activating emergency protocols." The floating platforms began to move, forming a spiral path to the central crystal. But as they watched, sections of the platforms turned dark and crumbled. "The corruption's spreading faster," Zara said. "We need to reach that crystal before." She was cut off as a pulse of energy shot from the corrupt sections. Where it hit, reality itself seemed to tear. Through the tears, Jake saw impossible things. Worlds where the luminary and drachnid never split, worlds where Earth had developed space travel centuries ago, and darker worlds where the void had already won. "The quantum barriers are breaking down," Nova realized. "If we don't stabilize the station, it'll tear a hole in every reality." Jake's crystal panel suddenly transformed again, splitting into 3 pieces. Each piece floated to one of them: Jake, Zara, and Lyra. "Of course," Lyra breathed. 3 pilots, 3 pieces, 3 species. The station wasn't just a weapon against the void. It was a key to fixing the original split. Zara finished. "Our ancestors built it as a last resort, a way to bring everyone back together." Another violent shake rocked the station. More platforms crumbled, and the darkness spread further across the central crystal. "Well," Jake said, gripping his piece of the crystal panel, "I guess we better figure out how to use it fast, because I don't think we're going to get another chance." The station's AI spoke one last time. "Kuantuum KNVRGNC Choose wisely." Above them, the central crystal began to spin, projecting images of different timelines. Jake saw hundreds of possible futures rushing past like a river of light. But which one was the right one? Zara's scales suddenly lit up with a pattern he'd never seen before. "Jake, look at your hands." He looked down to see ancient symbols appearing on his skin, glowing with the same light as their crystals. Similar marks appeared on Lyra's skin and Zara's scales. "The station's changing us," Lyra said in awe. But into what? Through the quantum tiers around them, thousands of faces watched, every version of themselves that had ever existed or could exist, all waiting to see what they would do next. The fate of not just their universe, but all possible universes, now rested in their hands, and they had about 5 minutes to figure out what to do with it. The glowing symbols on Jake's skin grew brighter, spreading up his arms like living tattoos. Around him, Zora's scales were creating patterns that moved like flowing water, while Lyra's natural glow had turned into swirling galaxies across her skin. But they had no time to marvel at their transformation. "Duck!" Jake shouted as another quantum terror ripped through the air above them. Through this one, he saw something that made his blood run cold, a version of Earth where the sky was black and the oceans were empty. "The station's showing us what will happen if we fail," Zara said, her voice shaking. Her scales flashed with images of her own world suffering the same fate. Suddenly, the central crystal pulsed with blinding light. A figure stepped out, or rather, 3 figures that kept shifting and merging into one. Jake realized he was looking at the combined form of the original builders: luminary, drachnid, and human ancestors who had worked together. "You who carry our blood," the figure spoke in 3 voices at once. "You have found our greatest success and our greatest failure." "The Unity Forge," Lyra breathed. "You didn't just build it to fight the void, did you?" The figure smiled sadly. The void is not our enemy. It is our reflection. The figure waved its hand, and the chamber filled with a hologram of history, but not the version they knew. Look, Nova pointed. The void. It's made of quantum energy from our own weapons. The war between our peoples created it. Correct, the figure said. Each blast of quantum energy, each attempt to change reality to suit our desires, tore holes in space-time. The void is those holes trying to heal themselves. Jake's crystal piece suddenly pulled him toward the central platform. Zara and Lyra's pieces did the same. Then why do we have these powers? Jake asked. Why choose us? The figure split into three again, each part speaking to one of them. Because you three can do what we could not. Work together without trying to control the outcome. The station isn't a weapon. It's a healing device. But before they could ask more questions, alarms blared throughout the station. The corruption had reached the central core, and reality itself was starting to unravel. Look at the quantum tears, Zara shouted. The holes in space were growing, showing thousands of different timelines bleeding into each other. Then Jake noticed something strange. In each timeline, no matter how different everything else was, he saw himself, Zara, and Lyra together. Sometimes they were fighters, sometimes scholars, sometimes just friends, but always together. That's it, he realized. The station isn't showing us what happens if we fail. It's showing us that we're connected in every reality. The symbols on their skin began to pulse and sync. Jake felt energy flowing between them, creating a triangle of power. The healing has to start with us, Lyra said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Not just here, but in every reality. The figure nodded. But be warned, to heal the quantum tears, you must first experience them all. Every possibility, every choice, every outcome. Few minds can handle such knowledge. We'll do it together, Zara said firmly, her scales now perfectly matching the patterns on Jake and Lyra's skin. They raised their crystal pieces, which floated up and merged with the central crystal. Instantly, their consciousness expanded across all realities. Jake felt himself living 1,000 lives at once. A reality where he grew up on Zara's world. One where Lyra was his childhood friend. Worlds where their peoples had never separated. Timelines where the void had been prevented. Futures where their descendants explored the universe together. The knowledge was overwhelming, threatening to tear their minds apart. But just as Jake thought he would lose himself, he felt Zara and Lyra's presence. Across every reality, they found each other, anchoring one another. Now, Jake shouted, though he wasn't sure which version of himself was speaking. We have to channel all of it into the station. They became living conduits of quantum energy. Through their combined consciousness, they could see the void for what it really was, not a destroyer, but a desperate attempt by reality to fix itself. The station's AI spoke one last time. QUNTUMCONNVERGNCET beginning THINALCQNC. The central crystal began to spin faster, drawing in the darkness from the quantum tears. But instead of fighting it, they guided it, helping it heal the damage naturally. Then something unexpected happened. As the quantum tears began to close, new images appeared. Futures none of them had seen before. Brand new possibilities that hadn't existed until this moment. The time streams, the ancestor figure said with wonder. You're not just healing them, you're creating new ones. But their success had drawn attention. Through the last remaining tears, they saw something massive stirring in the quantum void. Something that had been waiting, watching, and gathering strength for centuries. The station rumbled as a voice deeper than space itself spoke. So, the children have fine indeed to use their toys. But can they handle their real test? Jake, Zara, and Lyra looked at each other across 1,000 realities, knowing that fixing the quantum tears was just the beginning. Something far older than the void had been pulling the strings all along, and it was finally ready to show itself. "I don't suppose," Jake said with a nervous laugh that echoed through every timeline, "anyone saw this future coming." Zara's scales flashed with worry. Not in any reality. The ancestor figure began to fade. Remember, the power was never in the station. It was in your ability to trust each other completely. As the figure vanished, the chamber went dark except for their glowing symbols. In the darkness, countless eyes opened, watching them from between realities. The real game was just beginning. The darkness around them came alive with swirling patterns, like a living constellation. Those countless watching eyes merged into 7 massive ones, each a different color of the rainbow. A form took shape around them, something that looked like a mix between a dragon and a quantum computer, its body made of shifting mathematical equations. "I am NEXUS," the being's voice echoed through all realities at once. "Hechi First Intelligence." The game master. Jake, Zara, and Lyra stood their ground, their glowing symbols providing the only other light in the chamber. Through their connected consciousness, they could feel each other's fear and determination. "What game?" Jake demanded. "What's all this been about?" Nexus laughed, the sound making reality ripple. "Did you think your people's war was an accident? The void, the pyrothesis, all pieces on my board." Images flashed around them, showing the truth. Nexus had been guiding their civilizations for millennia, subtly pushing them toward conflict, then toward solutions, testing them, watching how they'd evolve. "But why?" Zara asked, her scales shifting with waves of anger and confusion. "Because Creation is boring without players." Nexus's eyes spun like galaxies. "I have seed millions of civilizations across the years. Only the most interesting survived." Suddenly, the quantum tiers reopened, but differently. Now they showed other alien races, other worlds, other tests. Some had failed, their realities erased. Others had passed, evolving into beings of pure energy. "So that's what this is." Lyra's voice shook with rage. "Just entertainment for you." "Entertainment?" "No." Nexus moved closer, its form changing with each movement. "I search for worthy successors, those who can maintain the quantum balance. When I find a rest. And you 3, UUV, doing something unprecedented." The being waved what might have been a limb, and their merged consciousness expanded further. Jake gasped as he saw what they'd actually accomplished in healing the quantum tiers. They'd created a completely new form of reality, one where separation between species was impossible, because everyone could feel each other's existence across all timelines. "UUV change the realities," Nexus said, sounding almost proud. "No one in the HAs EVR do anything before." But as they watched, they saw the change spreading too fast, too far. Their connection was affecting all realities at once, forcing every being in existence to feel every other being's emotions and thoughts. Some couldn't handle it. Chaos was spreading. "We have to stop it." Jake tried to pull back his power, but couldn't. "Too late," Nexus rumbled. "What YUUV CREATD must either stabilize or collapse. And you don't have the power to stabilize it." "But you do," Zara said suddenly, her scales flashing with inspiration. "That's why you're showing us this. You need us as much as we need you." The ancient being's eyes all focused on her. Cleaver child. "Yes, I have the power, but using it would mean breaking my own values. Unless we beat you at your own game," Lyra finished, understanding dawning. Nexus's form shifted again, turning into a massive quantum chessboard that stretched infinitely in all directions. Coercite. Defeat in me, and I will help you stabilize the NEUV reality UOUV created. Lose and everything are etas. All memorize ERASED. The game begins again. But as they looked at the quantum chessboard, they realized this was unlike any game they'd seen. The pieces moved in 5 dimensions, and each move affected all timelines simultaneously. Then Jake noticed something through their connected consciousness, a memory that existed in every reality, something so constant it had to be significant. In every timeline, no matter how different, he, Zara, and Lyra had always found each other, had always worked together. That's not random, he said slowly. In an infinite multiverse, that's impossible. Unless, Zara's scales lit up with understanding. Unless we're not just players. We're pieces that belong together from the start. Lyra finished. They looked at each other, then at Nexus, seeing the ancient being in a new light. It wasn't just testing them. It was trying to recreate something it had lost long ago. You had friends once, Jake said softly. Other beings like you, who helped maintain the quantum balance, but something happened to them. For the first time, Nexus's form wavered. They chose to sleep, to duriam NULUNIVRZs into being. I alone are idmemaying awake. Alone, for so very long. The quantum chessboard changed, showing them the true challenge, not to win, but to find a way to wake Nexus's ancient friends without destroying the delicate balance of reality. The HFY begins, Nexus announced, but remember, sometimes the only way to win is to change the nature of VXE2RI, ATIS ALF. The glowing symbols on their skin pulsed brighter as the quantum chessboard came alive around them. They had one chance to save not just their realities, but to heal something broken at the very beginning of existence. And somewhere, in the spaces between spaces, other ancient eyes began to open, stirring from dreams that had lasted billions of years. The quantum chessboard stretched endlessly around them, its pieces made of pure light and shadow. But Jake, Zara, and Lyra weren't looking at the board anymore. They were looking through it, seeing the patterns beneath reality itself. There, Zara's scales flashed with excitement. The sleeping ones, they're not just dreaming. They're creating. Through their shared consciousness, they saw it. Each of Nexus's ancient friends was dreaming entire universes into existence. Their dreams were the source of all realities, all possibilities. Korikit. Nexus's form shifted like a kaleidoscope. But their duriams grow dark. Without guidance, chaos spreads. Jake moved a quantum piece on the board, but instead of sliding it across, he moved it through time itself. The piece split into infinite versions, each showing a different possibility. That's why you need players who can see all outcomes at once. Suddenly, one of the ancient dreamers stirred. Its consciousness brushed against theirs, vast and alien. Images flooded their minds. The birth of stars, the death of galaxies, the dance of atoms, all happening simultaneously. Lyra gasped as understanding hit her. The game. It's not about winning or losing. It's about harmony. She moved another piece, not to capture, but to create a resonance with Jake's piece. The board hummed with energy. Zara saw it too. Her scales rippled with patterns that matched the quantum frequencies around them. She moved a third piece, completing a triangle of power. We don't play against each other. We play with each other. The board transformed, pieces merging and splitting in impossible ways. But now they understood. Each move wasn't about taking territory, but about creating harmony between different realities. Nexus's eyes spun faster. You begin to see. But can you handle the truth of what you must be Siomen? The ancient dreamer's consciousness touched them again, stronger this time. In that touch, they felt themselves changing. Their bodies began to shift like Nexus, becoming less solid, more quantum. We're becoming like you, Jake realized, watching his hands turn into swirling equations. No, Nexus corrected. You're becoming something in Eva, something they'd AHAs and EV or EXISID. Their transformed bodies could now move through all dimensions at once. Jake saw himself spread across every timeline, every reality. But he wasn't alone. Zara and Lyra were there too, their consciousnesses intertwined with his. Then they saw something that made even Nexus pause. Where their new forms touched, reality didn't just change, it sang. Actual music emerged from the quantum frequencies, a harmony of existence itself. The song of creation, Lyra whispered in awe. That's what the ancient ones have been dreaming. The universe's music. They moved together now, their actions on the quantum chessboard creating new notes in reality's song. Each move awakened more of the ancient dreamers, adding new instruments to the cosmic orchestra. But something was wrong. As the dreamers awakened, their eyes opened to a universe very different from the one they'd known. Some of them reacted with fear, their dreams turning to nightmares that threatened to tear reality apart. Quick! Zara's quantum form pulsed with urgency. We need to show them they're not alone. Together, they wove their own dreams into the song, creating a bridge between old and new. Through the music of reality, they shared their story, not just their recent adventures, but every possible version of their friendship across all timelines. The nightmares began to fade as the ancient ones felt the harmony in their connection. One by one, they added their own notes to the song, creating a symphony more beautiful than any universe had ever heard. Nexus's form began to change again, but this time, it was joining with them, becoming part of their quantum melody. You have enough Jewish GD game, it said, its voice now part of the music. You have bar anets for me the players, the MCLVs. But as the song reached its crescendo, a discord struck. One of the ancient dreamers wasn't joining the harmony. Its dreams remained dark, filled with a loneliness so deep it threatened to swallow all of existence. The first dreamer, Nexus's voice held ancient sorrow, the one who taught us all to shape reality. My oldest friend, and my greatest failure. The first dreamer's consciousness rose like a tidal wave of darkness, its pain and solitude overwhelming their quantum symphony. This was the source of the void, the original wound in reality that had never healed. Jake, Zara, and Lyra looked at each other across dimensions, knowing what they had to do. But reaching the first dreamer would mean diving into the deepest darkness any consciousness had ever known. Together, Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Zara's quantum form sparkled. Always. In every reality, Lyra added. They joined hands, or whatever their quantum forms now had, and prepared to dive into the darkness. The fate of all existence now depended on whether they could heal the oldest heart in the universe. Behind them, the quantum chessboard had become a portal, showing them the path into the first dreamer's consciousness. What they would find there, not even Nexus knew. Remember, Nexus called after them as they stepped into the darkness. In the deepest dreams, even gods can learn to wake up and dream new dreams. The darkness swallowed them, and the final movement of reality's symphony began to play. Inside the first dreamer's consciousness, darkness had texture. Jake, Zara, and Lyra floated through memories older than time itself. The birth of the first thought, the moment awareness first sparked in the universe. So much loneliness, Zara whispered, her quantum form shimmering with empathy. They saw it all. The first dreamer awakening in an empty cosmos, spending eons creating others like itself just to have company. Look, Lyra pointed to a swirling vision. The first dreamer taught them to shape reality, but something went wrong. The memory played out before them, the younger dreamers growing strong, developing their own ideas, drifting away to dream their own dreams. The first dreamer, creator of all, left behind again. That's why it created the game, Jake realized. The prophecies, the conflicts, the void, all attempts to make its children come back home. Suddenly, the darkness around them shifted. The first dreamer had noticed them. Its consciousness pressed against theirs, ancient, powerful, and terribly sad. What I have you come? The voice was like a black hole speaking. To mock my solitude be with your unity. But something unexpected happened. As the first dreamer touched their minds, their quantum forms resonated with a new kind of music, not the harmony they'd created before, but something deeper. The original song of existence. Zara's scales lit up with understanding. You're not just the first dreamer, you're the first song. Images exploded around them. The first dreamer singing reality into existence, each note creating new dimensions, new possibilities. But with no one to sing with, the song remained incomplete. Then Jake noticed something in their own quantum forms, echoes of that original music. We carry parts of your song, he said. Everyone does. Every reality is another verse. Lyra moved closer to the darkness, her form glowing brighter. You're not alone. You never were. The song is everywhere. It just needs all of us to sing it together. The first dreamer's consciousness rippled with confusion. Impossible. The others left. The song new ways broke in. No, Jake said, understanding flooding through him. They didn't leave. They became the song itself. Every life, every choice, every moment. They're all parts of your family singing back to you. Their quantum forms began to pulse with this truth. They weren't just three beings anymore. They were conductors, gathering the music of all existence. Through them, the first dreamer could hear everything. Children laughing on countless worlds. Stars being born in nebula nurseries. The quantum dance of atoms. The gravitational music of galaxies. Every prayer, every cry, every song of joy and sorrow. All of it one vast, eternal symphony. The first dreamer trembled. My children. All of them, Zara said softly. Every being that ever was or will be. Your family never stopped growing. Something began to change in the darkness. Where there had been emptiness, colors began to bloom. The first dreamer's consciousness started to transform. But then reality shuddered. The weight of all existence channeling through their quantum forms was too much. They began to fracture. We can't hold it. Lyra cried out. Their bodies were breaking apart across dimensions. Just then, they felt other presences joining them. Nexus and the awakened Ancient Ones had followed them in. Their combined power helped stabilize the connection. Not alone, Nexus said. Never you're alone again. The first dreamer's darkness began to lift, revealing its true form, a beam of pure creative energy, neither light nor dark, but all possibilities at once. As it transformed, reality itself transformed with it. The void wasn't disappearing. It was changing, becoming a space where new dreams could grow. The quantum tiers became windows between worlds, allowing different realities to harmonize with each other. Their bodies began to return to normal, but they were forever changed. The symbols on their skin had become permanent, allowing them to hear the cosmic symphony always. The game is over, the first dreamer said, its voice now full of joy. But the song is just beginning. What happens now? Jake asked, looking at his friends across dimensions. No. The first dreamer's form shifted into something like a smile. Now we dream together, all of us, forever. Reality rippled one last time as the first dreamer shared its greatest gift, the power to create new dreams, new worlds, new possibilities. not just with them, but with all conscious beings everywhere. The Unity Forge station transformed, becoming a nexus point where different realities could meet and create together. The quantum chessboard became a universal instrument, allowing anyone to add their own notes to creation's song. Zara looked at her scales, which now showed reflections of every reality at once. So we didn't just change the game. We changed what's possible. Lyra finished, her glow now a rainbow of quantum frequencies. Jake smiled, feeling the vibration of countless realities singing together. And the best part, this story will never end. It'll keep growing, keep changing, keep dreaming, they said together, their voices joining the infinite symphony of existence. In that moment, every being in every reality felt it. A spark of the first dreamer's power, the ability to shape reality through imagination and choice. The barriers between creator and creation dissolved, leaving only endless possibilities. And somewhere in the quantum spaces between moments, a new crystal appeared, waiting to be found by the next dreamer ready to add their verse to the eternal song. The end, and the beginning, of everything. A note appears in quantum script. Every story is a dream waiting to wake up. Every dreamer is a story waiting to be told. The symphony plays on.